Today, every Albertan has the right to access a free public library, to borrow books, attend programs, or connect with their community. Having a town library seems obvious and essential, but it wasn't always this way. In fact, Cochrane, a town filled with readers, homesteaders, and hardworking families, had no public library at all until 1950. And when a library did finally come, it wasn't because of the government or a rich philanthropist. It happened because a remarkable group of ordinary women saw a need and were determined to fill it. This is the story of how the Cochrane Public Library began and how it survived, stubbornly and brilliantly, to become the service we all know and love. The story begins back in 1905, when Alberta first became a province. Thanks to campaigning from people like Annie Davidson of Calgary, one of the first pieces of legislation passed by the new government was the Libraries Act. This encouraged communities to create a public library, but only if 10% of the all-male electorate voted in favour. What wasn't provided, however, was funding, so any community that wanted to create a library was limited by their ability to raise the necessary capital. This was a difficult undertaking, and although famous champion of libraries Andrew Carnegie was willing to shoulder the bulk of the costs, the first library in Alberta, the Memorial Park Library in Calgary, did not open her doors until 1912. Although other major metropolitan centres of the time, such as Edmonton, Red Deer, and Lethbridge, would soon follow in Calgary's footsteps, they would only allow municipal residents to borrow their materials. This meant that Cochrane, with its tiny population of around 200 people, had no feasible way to raise money for a public library, but nor could the residents use the facilities that were available. This didn't mean that there were no books to lend if you knew where to look or you knew the right people, because some well-worn copies of classics such as Black Beauty or Pride and Prejudice were shared by the school students, and other books could be borrowed and traded amongst neighbours and friends. Wealthier residents even had their own private libraries, such as this one at Minnehaha Ranch, but for the average resident of Cochrane, books remained an expensive luxury. World events slowed the establishment of libraries throughout Canada. The First World War, followed closely by the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, and then a second outbreak of international hostilities, meant that there was no money nor much political will to build libraries when there were far more pressing concerns for the population. By 1942, there were only 17 public libraries in the entire province of Alberta, trying to serve a population of over 776,000. Across the nation, half of Canadians and 95% of those in rural areas had no reasonable access to a library at all. By the late 1940s, however, there was a growing public demand for libraries as their educational value was increasingly recognised. But small communities like Cochrane, now with 500 residents in town and a further 3,000 in the surrounding district, there just wasn't the money available to establish a library. Indeed, even Cochrane schools were struggling to maintain the tiny classroom libraries for students. The situation seemed both desperate and impossible, but cometh the hour, cometh the man, so they say, although, in this case, it was cometh the women. In 1950, the Cochrane Home and School Association decided that something had to change. Perhaps they were inspired by the new community libraries opened the year before in Banff and Sundre, but at their October meeting, the association voted to set up and manage a brand new public library. Leading this charge were Vola McPherson and Nan Boothby, two determined, unstoppable women who were ably assisted by Amy Calloway and Grace Oldfield. The team was known as the Willing Working Women. Now, the average time to establish a public library in Alberta back then was 6 years, with a budget running to tens, if not hundreds of thousands. These women not only had the new library at Cochrane up and running in a matter of weeks, but they did so for just a few $100s. While Cochrane Town Council couldn't provide a budget to run the new library, they were able to gift an unused basement room in the newly purchased community hall as a home for the brand new library. The Home and School Association provided a small grant to cover setup and running costs. The willing, working women rolled up their sleeves and got to work, raising money, soliciting donations, scrubbing their new place clean, building bookshelves, and all the while they were taking a correspondence course on how to run a library. On November 24th, 1950, Cochrane Library opened its doors for the first time. Within a year, They had over 120 members and over 1,000 books available. The charge was $1 for adults to join and just 50 cents for children. The space was small, dark, and very cold, and the women who volunteered their time there half-jokingly referred to it as the dungeon. The people of Cochrane, however, just appreciated finally having a place where they could borrow books and indulge in their love of reading. Vola McPherson took the role as librarian until 1952, when Nan Boothby took over from her. For the next decade, Nan and the willing working women would keep the library collection growing, continue to serve the public, and continue to encourage a love of reading within the town, all on a voluntary basis. Like generations of librarians before and since, Nan and her team soon expanded their skill sets.
I'm looking for a book on television, but I forgot.
Do you know the author?
No, I don't, and I don't know the title either. But it's a blue book, and it kind of gives the whole story, you know.
I think we can help you.
Budgets were always tight, and so fundraising and frugality were essential. Damaged and careworn books were lovingly mended by the staff, and donations were both accepted and encouraged. Many people who grew up in Cochrane have fond memories of the wonderful library and the ladies who worked there. Children were encouraged to read and learn, while the staff always had a recommendation on hand for anyone unsure of what to read next. Despite being small and dark and often cold in the basement library, it rapidly became a valuable and much-loved resource in the town of Cochrane. In 1959, the Cochrane Home and School Association withdrew their financial support for the library. Although a small provincial grant was now available, money continued to be as tight as the space for the Cochrane Library. Although the willing working women were able to put together a miracle on a shoestring budget, this lack of resources would hamper library development for its first 25 years. In 1962, Nan's tragic and unexpected death left a deep wound in the community, and especially in the library that she had dedicated so much time and attention to. Luckily for Cochrane, Nan's professionalism and hard work had helped her to build an exceptional team of volunteers, so Margaret Beattie was able to step into Nan's shoes and lead the library forward. Despite the hard work of Margaret and the willing working women, the time and energy needed to continue running the library was taking its toll. The town had more than outgrown its facility, and it was proving difficult to get new volunteers. By 1973, the library board was down to just 3 members, and things were rapidly approaching a crisis point. That same year, Margaret brought in help in the form of Joseph Forsyth, a library development officer for the province of Alberta. While he praised the staff for their excellent collection, now 6,500 books strong, and their dedication, he was scathing about both the facilities and the budget that they were expected to work with. Forsyth urged Cochrane Town Council to bring in a bylaw to provide the library with $1 per capita funding, to which the province would add a further 75 cents per capita. This would practically triple the operating budget, but would only work if a new space was also provided. 2 years later, the town of Cochrane offered the library a new home, as there was a room available in the basement of the municipal building that, while not much bigger than the dungeon, at least it had better heat and lighting. 25 years after the willing working women launched the library, they finally moved out of the community hall basement. Unfortunately, they had outgrown their new location from practically the moment they moved in. But thankfully, it would not be a problem for too long, as 1980 would mark a major leap forward for Cochrane Library. In 1980, under the leadership of Anne Bryant, the library finally gained municipal status, a major milestone that unlocked stable funding from the town and larger provincial grants. In addition, the library also gained a new spacious home. The recently vacated St. Mary's Catholic Church was purchased by the town council and renovated into a bright, welcoming new library space. Not only could the collection finally be given room to both breathe and expand, there was space for programming and, perhaps most importantly, pay for the tireless, hard-working staff. In honour of the woman who had dedicated 12 years of her life to ensuring that Cochrane had a library to be proud of, the new facility was officially named the Nan Boothby Memorial Library. Now with the space and the budget it had needed for so long, the 1980s really saw our library come into its own. The excellent collection continued to grow, but now programming and technology could be added in line with the needs of the town. As new faces joined the team, several of the original willing working women were on staff to help ease the library into a new era while ensuring its roots remained honoured. It was even rumoured that the spirit of Nan herself had relocated to the new building, with more than one staff member reporting her kindly presence watching over their work. Our story might have ended here were it not for an unexpected twist in the tale. The population of Cochrane began to explode, increasing from 3,500 in 1981 to over 7,500 a decade later. Technology was also accelerating at a rapid pace, with everything from compact discs to personal computers now expected as a part of a modern library. And by the late 1990s, once again, Cochrane Public Library had outgrown its building. This time, however, both the people of Cochrane and the town council understood the value of their library, and although the process wasn't entirely smooth, it wasn't long before a new home was found. In the year 2000, 50 years after the willing working women first entered the dungeon and saw its potential, our library received its first purpose-built home. Bright, welcoming, and with flexible spaces to accommodate changes in both demographics and technology, our library and its wonderful staff have continued to provide access to information, education, and entertainment for our community. That's not to say that there aren't still challenges. The last 25 years have seen Cochrane become the fastest growing town in Canada as our population continues to climb past 32,000 people. Technology and communication has changed the way our society works, and thanks to the internet, we are almost drowning in information, and not all of it's real. Cochrane Public Library remains a place of hope, help, and community in our rapidly changing world. So 3 cheers for the Cochrane Public Library and all who sail in her. But perhaps most importantly, thank you to the willing working women and to all our wonderful staff and volunteers for working so hard to bring our library to life.